Why is it so important that we make such an effort at Easter, and not just at Easter, but like all year round? Why do we make so much of an effort to reach people? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because God has called us to be good neighbors. Everybody say good neighbors. Good neighbors. That's what we've been learning over this last few weeks in this series called Good Neighbor. We've been learning that it's not just about us. It's not just about what we can get. It's about using our lives to be a good neighbor to the people around us in our community, and the people that are in our neighborhoods, and the people that are in our family, and the people that we work with and that our kids go to school with, that God has called us to be a good neighbor, to make a difference in their lives. And we've been studying through this very kind of familiar, famous kind of parable or story that Jesus tells called the parable of the Good Samaritan. How many have heard the Good Samaritan before, right? Yeah, very famous parable. And in this parable, we've just been looking at what does it mean to be a good neighbor, and what does God call us to do as we are being good neighbors to those around us. And we've learned kind of three things already. We've learned that the first thing we got to do is we got to care. Everybody say care. We got to care for those that are in need. And Pastor Joshua taught us how to be moved with compassion for the people, to not just see the needs, but to be moved towards the people that are around us. And then we talked the second week about how we got to learn how to dare to love those who are different than us. And Pastor Amber, she taught us what it means to go, hey, I'm going to love people no matter what they look like, if they're the same age as me or same skin color as me, or if they have different political views or whatever it might look like. Like, I'm going to love people. I'm going to dare to reach beyond myself and really love the people that are different than me. And then last week, I already bragged on Pastor Amber and Pastor Joshua for how they did. Last week, I taught. Come on, didn't I do a good job today? I'm just joking around. But last week we talked about how we're going to prepare. Everybody say prepare. Prepare a place where everybody that walks through the doors can feel welcomed and can feel loved. And man, that's what we're working to do every week, working so hard to make a place where everyone can come in and feel loved, so that we can do this last thing that we're going to talk about today, and that is this, so that we can share. Everybody say share. So that we can share with those that are in need. In fact, that's exactly what happens in the story of the Good Samaritan. Jesus says there was this man who is beaten up by robbers, and he's left on the side of the road, left there for dead. And there's a priest and a Levite, some religious people that walk by, and they see him there in the road, but they just walk right by. But then there's a good man, a Samaritan man, who sees the need, and he's moved with compassion. He cares, and he's able to dare to reach beyond himself to someone who is different than him. And he picks him up, and he puts him on his donkey, and he takes him to the inn, where the innkeeper has a place prepared for him so that he can be healed. And then I want you to notice what we see happens in this passage in Luke chapter number 10. Let's read it together. It says, and the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Here's what I want you to see, is that the Samaritan didn't just care, and he didn't just dare to reach out, and he didn't just take him to a place for somebody else to take care of him, but when he got there, he opened his wallet and he paid the innkeeper to make sure that the man would be cared for. He was willing to share what he had so that the man could experience healing. And that's what it means to be a good neighbor. It means to be able to share whatever we have with those around us who are in need. Now, what does that look like in kind of modern day, like in our lives? What does it mean to be a good neighbor? Does it mean, I share a cup of sugar with the neighbor, that needs a cup? Well, that might be, we've got some really awesome neighbors that live right next door to us. In fact, Brandon and Amber actually attend Lifegate Church, and they're super cool people. And over the Christmas holiday, we were making some cookies or something like that, and we were kind of short on sugar or something. I think it was sugar, and we went next door, and Amber gave us a cup of sugar, and those cookies were good. Come on, how many are thankful for neighbors like that, right? But it's more than just that. Like, what do we have to share with those around us? Well, I'll tell you what I believe that we have to share that is the most important thing that we have to share, and that is a relationship with Jesus. What does it mean to be a good neighbor? It means to share Jesus with people around us. with the people in our school, with the people at our work, with the people in our neighborhood, with the people in our family, with the people on the soccer team, like to share our relationship with Jesus with those that are around us. Now, let's just be honest today, that can be a little bit intimidating. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like when I start talking about sharing your faith or telling people about Jesus, come on, don't we all get a little bit nervous, right? Because what if they don't like it? Or what if I don't know what to say? Or what if I mess things up? Or what if I don't know enough of the Bible? And it can be a little scary. I mean, it's a little easier to share, your weed eater with your neighbor whose weed eater's broken down than to share Jesus with a neighbor whose life is broken down. Come on, right? And yet when I think about this story, like I think about this man who has been beaten up and left there for dead. And here's what I think. I think that is so many people in their life. That is so many people that just like the priest and the Levite walked right by, that we walk right by every day. People that we see in the streets and people that we work with and people that we know in our neighborhoods and people that are in our family, that life has beaten them up. Come on, I think it wouldn't take you very long to think of people in your life that maybe are broken in areas of their life. Maybe they've been broken in their relationships. And they're carrying around this weight of this broken relationship. People who are struggling in their marriage and their relationship is falling apart. That maybe people who have just found out that their spouse was having an affair, that their spouse was, addicted to pornography, or that their spouse just filed for divorce and their heart is broken. People that we work with and that we know that are struggling in their relationships with their children or with their siblings or with their parents, and it's broken on the inside of their hearts, this relational struggles. Maybe others that we look around and we see that, man, they're financially broken. Let's just put it like this way, they're broke, you know what I'm saying? And all of the expenses and all of the pressure that comes from the struggles that we face financially, and there's people all around us that got all kinds of debt from medical bills and from credit card bills, and then there's all the. How many have noticed it's a little more expensive to live nowadays than it was not long ago, right? And all of that pressure and people are struggling under the brokenness of what that feels like. Yeah. Or what about people that that maybe they got some brokenness mentally or emotionally, and they're carrying around the weight of anxiety, or the weight of depression, or the weight of maybe even suicidal thoughts or tendencies, and they carry that around day after day after day. And these are the people that we work with. These are the people that we live with, the people that we know, the neighbors that are all around us, those who are broken spiritually, going through life aimlessly, with no ambition and no direction and no purpose for their lives. Just like the man in the story, life has broken them down and beaten them up. And just like the priest and the Levite, we see them every day. What does God call us to do? He's called us to share with them. To share with them the best that we have, to share Jesus with them. And that's intimidating. So what I want to do today is just talk about how can we make this a little more simple? Because so many times in our mind we think, well, I don't know if I know enough scripture, and I don't know if I'm not a preacher, I don't know if I can do that or whatever. And so what I thought we'd do today is just talk about what are some easy ways that we can share Jesus with people around us, to share with those in need. And so I just wrote down 3. If you have your notes, you can write these down, and we're going to try to make it as easy and simple as possible to be good neighbors to those around us who are broken and hurting. And it starts with this. The first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to share your life. Everybody say, share your life. Share your life. Here's the deal. Sharing Jesus might just start by sharing your life. It might just start by having a relationship with someone who is hurting. In fact, we have a saying around here. It's actually more than a saying. It's one of our core responsibilities, one of the values that we live by here. And we say it like this: we do life together. How many ever heard us say something like that, right? And that's so important that as a church body that we're sharing life with one another. We're doing life together. But what if it was more than just that? What if it wasn't just like here at LifeGate we do life together, but what if we took that beyond the 4 walls of the church and said, hey, we're going to be people who do life with the people around us. and not to just do life with them, not to just be friends and do stuff on the weekend, but actually with an intentional purpose of going, hey, I want to share my life with people so that when the opportunity comes, I'll be able to pour into them and maybe even share Jesus with them. And the truth is, that's the most effective way to reach people anyway. You know, when you think about, the pastor talks about, evangelism or talks about sharing Jesus or sharing your faith, a lot of things come to mind. You know, we think about stuff like, that means going door to door, knocking on people's doors, or it means, handing out tracts, or, he's talking about that guy on the corner with the megaphone yelling, turn or burn. You've seen that guy before, right? But maybe that's not the most effective way to reach people. Maybe actually a more effective way to reach people is just to have a relationship with them, to just love them, to just be a friend to people who are in need, to be intentional about just spending time and just hanging out with that coworker or that family member or that person that lives on our block or those people that our kids go to school with their kids, and just being intentional about that and just saying, how can I love on people? In fact, when you think about this is exactly how Jesus lived. You go read the Gospels, you see what Jesus did. You don't see him on the street corners very often saying turn or burn. He definitely didn't say that, right? No, most of the time what was he doing? Is just going on a walk with people. Going fishing with them, going to their house to eat. In fact, the Pharisees actually called him a friend of sinners. To the Pharisees, that was an insult. But I think to Jesus, that would have been a compliment. Yeah, of course I am, because I came to seek and save that which is lost. Like, I came to give my life as a ransom for many. If you didn't know, those were things that he said, right? Like, I came here not for the ones that are already saved. I came for the ones who don't yet know me, and I came to build relationship with them so that they could come to relationship with me. And what if we just begin to have that kind of attitude, like, how can I build a relationship with somebody in my circle of influence, somebody in my neighborhood, somebody in my life, for the purpose of saying, I want to share my life with them so that when the opportunity comes, I'm not just hanging out with them, I'm not going to act like them, but I'm going to be there so that when the opportunity comes, I can influence them by sharing my Savior with them. In fact, this is what Paul was talking about in Colossians chapter 4 and verse number 5. Look what he says. He says, when you are with unbelievers, always make good use of the time. Be pleasant and hold their interest when you speak the message. Choose your words carefully and be what? Be ready to give answers to anyone who has questions. Check this out. What does he say? He's saying, hey, when you're with people who are unbelievers, notice he says when, not if, right? He says, hey, when you're with people who don't know the Lord, here's what I want you to do. I don't want you to just be with them just to be hanging out with them. Like, I want you to be with them for a greater purpose than that. I want you to be with them so that when the opportunity comes, you can make the most of that opportunity. And you can be ready. So when that time comes, you're able to share your faith share Jesus with them because you have built a relationship with them. Now, here's the deal. I'll be the first to admit this morning, this is not always easy. In fact, for those of us who are followers of Jesus and have been Christians, and those of us that have been church people for a long time, it gets even harder. Because you know what happens? Like, the more you're in church, the more it becomes that the people that you know and the people that you do life with are people that are at your church, people that are other Christians, people that already know Jesus. Come on, how many? I'm hearing a few amens from the front row, but how many know what I'm talking about? And let me just say this. You think that's hard for you? Imagine what it's like when you're a pastor. Because pretty much everybody, there are over 1,000 people that come to LifeGate. That's my life. You're my people. Like, everybody that I know, like, mostly are LifeGate church people, And then every day I come to work with people who are pastors. And all of those people that I work with on a daily basis, they know Jesus. At least I think they do. A couple of them I'm working on just a little bit, but. And here's the deal. The deeper we go in our relationship with the Lord and the more relationships we have with people who are like in our church and who know the Lord, the harder it is sometimes, right? But I bet there are people that are in your life that if you would think about it, that you do know that you could pray for, that you could have a relationship with, that you could maybe if you're having to just say, this is a long-term investment. I'm not expecting them to come this Easter or next Easter or 10 Easters from now, but I'm going to continue to love them. I'm going to continue to pour into them and be there for them. And when that opportunity comes, I'm going to be ready. I was just thinking about people in my own life, like, what does this look like? You know, I'm thinking about my neighbors on the other side, not the ones who attend church here, but the ones on the other side that I'm thinking about Thomas and his grandkids that my son likes to go out and play with, and thinking like, you know, maybe what I could do is just hang out there just a little bit longer with them. And just talk a little bit more, just build a little bit more of a relationship. I'm thinking about the kids, you know, in my son's first grade class and the parents. And when we'll go this week, I'm sure, to an Easter party at school, or when Easton had his birthday party a couple of months ago, and the dads that were all there at the bounce house place, you know what I'm talking about, and just trying to be a little bit more intentional. Is that a word? That's not intentional. I speak for a living, you guys. Being a little more intentional, maybe a little more engaged with the purpose of, could I build a relationship so when the time comes, I didn't just share my life, but I shared Jesus. We're going to share Jesus by sharing our life. Number 2, write this down. Here's what we're going to do. We're just going to share our church. Everybody say it. Share your church. Man, this is another great way to share Jesus with people, is just share your church with them. In fact, this is the kind of culture that we have intentionally worked hard to try to create here at LifeGate, is a culture that is an invite type culture, like one where you would not be embarrassed, but you would actually be proud to invite your friend to come to church with you here at LifeGate. We've worked hard to make it, we talked about it last week, preparing a place that is warm and that is welcoming and that is inviting, that when people come in, they feel loved and they don't feel judged, but they feel cared for and they feel welcomed and invited in. We've worked hard to make sure that everything that we do to the best of our ability. We do it with excellence to try to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward, so that when people come, and that is consistent from week in to week out, so that you're not ever out there wondering like, okay, is this a good week to bring them, or is this the week that they're going to do something weird, right? And we know the pastor's weird every week, so we just kind of overlook that. But all the other stuff, right? It's safe, it's consistent. It's a place where you can invite someone to come in, to be a part, to create a moment so a life can be changed. Like, we've done our part. We know we can't change a life, but we've done our part to create a place so that when people come in, the Holy Spirit can do a work in their life, and their life can be touched and changed forever. And here's what's so cool, is that people are open to that kind of thing. In fact, statistics tell us, look at this, that 62% of people who do not attend church said that they would come to a church service if somebody invited them. That means if you have 10 friends, you invited them all, 6 of them would come. That's actually pretty good stats. 6 out of 10. What does that tell me? It tells me people are open to something like that. And let me just say this. This kind of stuff's happening at LifeGate all the time. Week after week, people are coming in because you invited them, and they're having a moment with God, and their life is being changed. In fact, I just got an email from a friend, my new friend Bobby. He's been coming to church here for a couple of months. And a couple of Sundays ago, he emailed me. I want you to see I'll just read it so you can see what it says. He says, "Good afternoon. I just wanted to say thank you for the message today. It was really needed for sure. This morning before service, I introduced you to my friend that I brought to church with me, and I just wanted to let you know that at the end of service, when she heard the message, she decided to turn her life over to the Lord." Come on, isn't that awesome? He goes on and says, "So thank you. Is just the way you speak during the service that draws people in." And here's what I think. He wasn't saying it's the way I speak. He was talking about the whole environment, the whole thing, that like we have created a place where his friend could feel welcome and could feel loved, and it just draws people in. And I'm so blessed that the Lord has guided me to LifeGate, and you guys have taken me in and changed my life too. Listen to this, I have been praying for my friend, and today my prayer was answered. Come on, that's what we're talking about. I'll tell you what, that's not really all that hard. Just go, hey, come to church with me. And I'll tell you what will happen. When you do that, like, you will experience church in a whole different way when you're sitting in church and it's not just you, but next to you is that friend that you have been praying for. And come on, you're going to think differently. Suddenly you're not going to be thinking about, I hope they sing my favorite song today, or I've heard Pastor tell that joke before. Can he get some new jokes? No, you're going to be thinking like, I wonder what my friend's thinking. I wonder what's happening. And you know what's going to happen? Your prayer life is going to go through the roof on that day, because you're going to be sitting there praying. My friend that I've been praying for, that I love, is sitting here next to me. God, let today be the day that you move during worship. God, let today be the day that the message touches my friend's heart. Let today be the day that my friend responds and gives their life to Jesus. And I'm telling you, it won't just change that person that you invited. It'll do something for you too. In fact, this is exactly what Paul was talking about. Check this out in Philemon 1 and verse 6. Look what he says. He says, I pray that you may be active in sharing your faith, so that you will have a full understanding of every good thing we have in Christ. What is he saying? He's saying, I want you to be active in sharing your faith. Not just so that other people can know Jesus, although that's huge, that's the biggest reason, but also so that you can have a full understanding of everything that God has for your life. I'm just telling you something. You will grow exponentially when you extend your faith to invite someone, and that person's sitting next to you, and then when that person gives their life to Jesus, come on, your faith is going to go through the roof, and that is what it's all about. And can I just add this little story here? You may never know how God might use your invitation. Just this last week, I was scrolling through Instagram, and a friend of mine shared a reel on Instagram, a little post. It was a guy speaking, and the guy's name is Lee Strobel. Maybe some of you have heard of him before. He used to be an atheist. He worked in the newspaper industry in Chicago, and he began to try to investigate if Jesus was really real. Like a journalist, he just investigated it like that, and at the end of his investigation, he actually determined Jesus was real, and he gave his life to Jesus because he had done that as an investigation. Pretty awesome. Years later, he became a pastor, and he was preaching this message, and he's telling this story in this reel that I saw on Instagram. And the story was basically, he said, when he was working at the newspaper, after he'd gotten saved, God began to speak to his heart and said, I want you to invite that coworker to come to church on Easter. And he goes, man, I know that coworker is an atheist. I know he doesn't know the Lord. I know he's not going to want to come. But all right, God, I'll do it. And so he goes into the coworker's office, and he says, hey, this weekend is Easter. I'd love for you to come to church with me on Easter. And the man just shut him down. Said, I'm an atheist. I can't believe you'd even invite me to do that. I'm not going. So Lee went away kind of, disappointed, but he just thought, well, I just did what the Lord asked me to do. Never heard anything else about it for years and years. It was like 10, 12 years later. One day, about 10 or 12 years later, he was speaking, and a man came up to him as he was speaking, or after he got done speaking, and said, I want to thank you, because the invitation that you gave changed my life. And Lee was like, I don't know this guy. I never invited this guy. I don't even know what you're talking about. And as they began to investigate a little bit and figure out kind of what happened, basically what happened was this man was a construction worker who happened to be in the office working on the tile in the room when Lee invited his coworker to come to church. And that man had been struggling in his marriage, and he just overheard the invitation. And when he heard the invitation, he thought, I need to take my family to church on Easter. So he went home and told his wife, we're going to church on Easter. And he came to church on Easter, and he got saved. And now he'd been serving the Lord for 10 or 12 years. And there he was in Lee's church saying, thank you for the invitation that you gave. You didn't even know what was happening, but you obeyed God, and it changed my life forever. Come on, that's powerful stuff. We share our lives. We share our church, and that leads me to the third thought, and that is this. We share our story. Sometimes we go, I don't know if I know enough Bible. I don't know if I know what to say. I don't know if I've learned how to lead somebody to Christ. But let me just tell you something. You may not know enough Scripture, but you know a story. you have a story. And here's the thing about a story is that people can argue with a sermon and they can argue with the scripture, but they can't argue with your story because it's your story. And some of you are like, man, I got a story because I was once lost, but now I've been found. Man, I used to be addicted, but Jesus set me free. Some of you go, man, I used to have a marriage that was a mess and we were headed towards divorce, but Jesus came into the marriage and he changed our lives forever. Some of you are going, man, I used to, have alcohol problems, or I used to have drug problems, or I used to be depressed, or I used to be filled with anxiety, or I used to drink and cuss and chew and go with girls who do. I don't know what your story was like, but you know where your story was and where you came from. And some of you are going, man, like I don't have a story like that. I've been in church all my life, but I used to go to church and not know Jesus, but then Jesus showed up in my life and my life is different. Guess what? You don't have to go out and get some kind of big testimony. You just use your story. And here's what happens. It's amazing how often your story will connect with somebody else's story. You'll say, you know what? We lost a baby and that was so painful. And someone else will go, oh man, so did we. Share more with me about that. Oh, we went through a marriage relationship struggle. Oh man, I'm going through that too. Oh, I went through a place where I felt hurt by the church, or I felt, abandoned by church people or whatever. Oh, I went through that too. And your story will connect with somebody else's story that will lead that person closer to a relationship with Jesus Christ. And when I think about that, man, I think about the man in the story that Jesus told. There he is, beaten up, broken down on the side of the road. After he had been healed, I just got to think, he didn't keep that story to himself. I just got to believe that he went back to his hometown, he went back to his family, he went back to the people that he knew and said, you know what? I was left on the side of the road for dead. I would have died, but someone came along and rescued me. And guess what? Every one of us that are here that are followers of Jesus, we have that exact same story. We have been beaten up and broken. Sin had beaten us up. But Jesus came along and he was the good neighbor that rescued us. And if that is what Jesus has done for us, then hasn't he called us to share that story with others around us? How do we share Jesus? We share our life, share our church, share our story. And every week, every day when you go to work, you have opportunity to do that. But this week, we have an even greater opportunity because people's hearts are open like they wouldn't be open any other time. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pray that God is going to use us. In fact, we're going to pray that in this moment right here and right now, that maybe there's some of you that are here that you're the one that needs to hear the story. Today, in this moment, your life is going to be changed. I'm going to ask you to bow your head and close your eyes with me today. Maybe some of you are here today, and as I'm talking about this story, maybe there's some of you that would say, I relate more with a man who's been broken, beaten up. Maybe some of you are thinking, man, that's me when you were describing, man, that's my marriage, or those are my finances, or that's my mental health situation. That's where I'm at. I just don't seem to have any direction or purpose for my life. And today, in this moment, will be a time when you're going to be able to say, I relate to that man. And what I want to tell you is that Jesus was that good Samaritan. And he's in this moment right here to love you, to care for you, to show you compassion, to bring you up to a place through his son where you can experience healing.
Thank you for joining us online today. Make sure and hit subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for more notifications. We can't wait to engage with you this week.